Okay, so we're diving into Kamala Harris's CNN town hall. You sent over some pretty insightful analysis, and we're going to break down some moments and see what they might tell us about her as a candidate.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go beyond just like the surface. Let's look at the nuance of her responses, especially on some of those like hot button issues.
Yeah, perfect. So the analysis really zones in on this moment where she kind of seems to dodge a question about her stance on fracking. It was during that back and forth about the Biden administration's energy policy. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. I do. It was a very interesting moment. So the question they asked her was if she still stood by that statement that she made in 2019 that she would ban fracking if she were elected president. And her answer during this town hall, she didn't really give a straight answer. She instead highlighted her role in breaking a Senate tie to approve more fracking leases. Actually.
Okay, so that's a pretty big shift from her original um, stance, wouldn't you say? Why do you think she might have taken this approach?
Well, it really does make you wonder about her motivations. Was she intentionally trying to appeal to those voters in those like energy producing states? Or has she genuinely like changed her stance based on new information or just changing circumstances? It's tough to say for sure, but it definitely, is open to interpretation.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder about the consistency of her views. The analysis also talks about this shift in her stance on border security. So back in 2019, she was advocating for decriminalizing border crossings, and now she's talking about the need for security at the border and the rule of law. What do you make of that?
It's another interesting example of her views changing. Her position now seems to be much more in line with what the Biden administration is doing. They're focused on border security and enforcement. This shift, I mean, it could be interpreted as her just trying to align with the party, the party platform.
Mhm.
Or maybe it's a response to the public's opinion on immigration changing.
Yeah, you really got to wonder how voters are interpreting these shifts. Is it flexibility? Is it flip-flopping? I don't know. The analysis also points out that these changing positions extend to healthcare as well. Remember how she was such a strong supporter of Medicare for all during those 2020 primaries?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And now it seems like her focus has moved more towards taking like smaller steps,
Mhm.
emphasizing things like negotiating drug prices, expanding access within the existing system, which I mean is definitely different from when she was supporting a single payer healthcare system.
Yeah. Do you think that she is trying to moderate her positions to like appeal to more voters, or is it more about like being practical and recognizing how hard it is to like make those big sweeping changes?
It's really a complicated question. It's possible she's just trying to find a balance, a
Right.
balance between her more progressive ideas and the reality of what it takes to govern. Maybe she's come to believe that taking these smaller steps is just more realistic in our current political climate.
Yeah, it's definitely something that voters are going to be thinking about as they look at her as a candidate. Now, the analysis also criticizes her for spending a good amount of time during this town hall criticizing Donald Trump. Is that a good strategy, do you think?
Well, I mean, it's a pretty common one. It can work to remind voters of your opponent's flaws, especially if you can show how your strengths are different, but there's definitely a risk. You can come across as too negative or too focused on the past instead of like presenting a positive vision for the future.
Right. It can start to sound more like complaining than offering solutions.
Yeah.
Did she hit that balance,
hmm
or was it too much anti-Trump rhetoric?
Well, according to this analysis, it seems like she might have missed some chances to present her own vision more forcefully. There were definitely times when she could have moved on from criticizing Trump and really outlined her own plans, especially for addressing those issues that the audience brought up.
So maybe a missed opportunity to really connect with voters on a deeper level, focusing more on what she's against rather than what she's for.
That's what the analysis seems to suggest, yeah. I mean, voters want to hear about solutions, How is a candidate going to address their concerns? How are they going to, improve their lives? Criticizing the opposition can be a part of that, but it shouldn't be the main focus. There needs to be a clear, compelling alternative.
I felt like there were a few moments where she could really connected with the audience on a personal level, but she kind of held back.
I agree with that. Town halls, they're really a unique opportunity for candidates to show, like, their human side, right? Share personal stories and really connect with voters emotionally. It's a chance to go beyond those rehearsed talking points and show their true selves.
And the analysis really emphasizes that missed opportunity for authenticity.
Yeah.
They talk about specific moments where she could have been more open, shared more of her own experiences, and really built that stronger rapport with the audience.
Exactly. Think about that question about her administration's economic policies and how some of their promises haven't been kept. That was a real chance to acknowledge the struggles, express empathy for those who are struggling, and outline a path forward. Instead, she seemed to deflect blame instead of, taking responsibility.
It almost felt like she wasn't quite connecting with those anxieties and frustrations that the audience was feeling, which is really a shame because those are the very things that drive people to vote in the first place.
Exactly. Voters, they're looking for leaders who understand their struggles, leaders who share their values and who can really show them a path to a better future. Authenticity and empathy are so powerful for building that connection, and it seems like she might have missed some chances to really use those during this town hall.
Okay, so we've talked about those evasive responses, those shifts in policy that focus on criticizing Trump, and the missed opportunities to really show her authentic self. There's one more big critique in the analysis that we should unpack,
Yeah.
and that's her lack of a concrete plan, a legislative agenda.
You're right. Voters need to know what a candidate is actually planning to do if they get elected. It's not enough to just talk about general goals or ideals. A strong leader is going to have a clear vision, right? And they'll lay out specific steps to make that vision a reality.
So what does the analysis say about how she did in this area? Did she present a clear legislative agenda, or did she come up short?
Well, they say that she leaned too much on vague statements, generalizations. She didn't really give specifics about how she'd handle those key issues. Take healthcare, for example.
Okay, yeah, walk me through that.
She talked about, affordable health care, reducing costs, all that. But she never really got into the specifics of how she would actually make those things happen. Would she, push for a public option? Would she expand subsidies? Would she negotiate drug prices? The analysis says that she didn't really answer those critical questions.
So it sounds like she was big on the what, but not so much on the how.
You could say that, and it wasn't just healthcare. The analysis says it was the same with things like economic inequality, education reform, worthy goals for sure, but not a lot of detail about the actionable steps or specific legislative priorities.
Now, some people might say that this is all, strategic, that she's keeping things open, flexible so she can adjust as the campaign goes on. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's a fair point. It's a tricky thing, right? You have to offer detailed plans, but you also need to be flexible enough to adapt if things change. The problem is that it can make you seem vague, like you're not prepared.
Yeah. Right. Voters want to see that you've really thought about the issues.
Yeah.
That you have a clear vision and a way to actually address them.
Exactly. They're looking for a leader who can show them the way forward, someone
Yeah.
who can get them excited and rally support for their ideas. If you don't have those concrete plans, it can make people doubt your ability to lead effectively.
This deep dive is really interesting. It seems like there's this common thread running through all these different criticisms, like a lack of specifics,
Mhm.
a tendency to be general, not wanting to really get into the nitty-gritty details.
You're picking up on something important there. Is this a deliberate choice, or is this just, how she communicates?
It makes you wonder what's behind it all,
Right.
and how it might affect her connection with those voters who are looking for those real solutions and a leader who can really lay out a clear vision for what's next.
It's something voters will have to decide for themselves as they're evaluating her. Yeah. We need to examine those moments where she was challenged on her record and see if she took responsibility for any shortcomings. That's a key aspect of leadership that voters are looking for.
And that's precisely where we'll pick up in part 2 of this deep dive. Stay tuned as we continue to analyze Kamala Harris's CNN town hall performance.
Picking up where we left off, let's talk about that critique of transparency and accountability. The analysis says she missed some chances to really show those qualities, especially when she was talking about her record as a prosecutor.
Yeah, I remember a couple moments during the town hall where they really pressed her on those issues like criminal justice reform and some of those specific cases that she handled.
Right. There was that one question about, her office's resistance to DNA testing in that case, where the guy was later exonerated. It was a chance for her to address those concerns about her approach to criminal justice, and whether whether her thinking had evolved at all.
Yeah, and how did she respond to that?
Well, the analysis suggests that her response didn't really have that detailed explanation or the kind of self-reflection that some voters might have wanted to hear. She defended her record, but she didn't really get into the specifics of that case or acknowledge if there were any missteps.
So it sounds like maybe a missed opportunity to connect with those folks who are really pushing for criminal justice reform,
Right.
to show them that she's learned from those past experiences and and is willing to change her thinking on these really, really complex issues.
That's right. These town halls, they're a chance to really engage with voters, on a deeper level to address their concerns and show them that you're willing to grapple with those difficult questions. And in this case, the analysis says that she could have been more open, more transparent.
It's interesting. The analysis, it kind of draws this parallel between her response there and that moment we talked about before with those economic policies. Like in both cases, there seemed to be that tendency to deflect blame instead of just taking responsibility,
Hmm.
owning it.
That's a really good point. It does make you think, do these instances show a pattern of behavior or are they just isolated things? It's something that voters are going to have to think about as they're, considering her candidacy.
It makes me think about how important it is to own your mistakes, especially when you're a leader, right? People are much more likely to trust someone who can admit when they've messed up and shows that they're willing to learn and grow from it.
Absolutely. Voters want to see that authenticity, that humility, They want to see that you're human, that you can relate. Being transparent and accountable, those are essential to building that trust.
Okay, so let's shift gears for a sec and go back to that legislative agenda or the lack of one. We talked about it before, but I want to dig a little deeper. The analysis says she was, all about the big ideas, but not so much about the specifics.
Yeah, they point out that she made these broad statements about her goals, but there wasn't a lot of detail about how she would get there. For example, on climate change, she talked about how urgent it is to address the crisis, but didn't actually outline any concrete steps for, things like reducing emissions or moving to renewable energy.
So big goals, but not really a clear roadmap for how to get there.
That's the critique. Yeah. And it's not just climate change. The analysis points out similar stuff with issues like economic inequality and education reform. Those were the goals,
Mhm.
definitely. But again, not a lot of actionable plans or specific things that she would prioritize in legislation.
Now, some people might say that this is strategic, right? That she's doing this on purpose, keeping things open so she doesn't get bogged down in all those details during the campaign. What do you think about that?
It's a valid argument. There's a balance there, between having those detailed plans and staying flexible enough to change if you need to. But the danger is that it can make you look vague, like you haven't really thought things through.
All right, voters, they want to know that you've done your homework, that
Oh,
you
yeah.
you, you have a vision and you know how you're going to make it happen.
Exactly. They want a leader who can show them the path, right?
Hmm.
Who can get them excited about that path and rally support to make it a reality. If you don't have concrete plans, it can make people question if you can really lead effectively.
It's interesting because there seems to be this theme popping up, right? That lack of specifics, the general statements, not really wanting to get into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah. That's a great observation. Is this something she's doing on purpose or is this just her natural style, how she communicates?
It really makes you wonder what's behind it, right?
Yeah.
And how it's going to play with those voters who are really looking for those solutions, who want a leader who's going to tell them exactly how they're going to fix things.
Definitely something for voters to consider as they're, making up their minds about her. Now let's not forget about that critique of those missed opportunities to really show her authentic self. The analysis suggests that there were several moments where she could have connected with the audience in a more personal way, but she held back.
Yeah, I remember thinking that too. Like when they asked her about her biggest regret as a public servant, it felt like she could have been more vulnerable there. Showed a little more of her human side, but she gave this really calculated, safe answer.
Exactly. Those town halls, they're a great chance to connect with voters on an emotional level, right? To share those personal stories and really show that empathy and understanding.
It's about showing them you're not just a politician up there giving a speech.
Yeah.
You're a real person who's faced challenges, made mistakes, and you're doing this because you really want to help people.
You said it perfectly. And those moments where she seemed to hold back, she might have missed a chance to really make that connection with the audience.
Makes me wonder if being cautious like that is part of her plan or if it's just who she is, you know?
It's hard to say for sure. Some people are naturally more guarded, more private. Others are more open to sharing their personal lives. At the end of the day, it's up to each voter to decide if they think she's being genuine, if they can relate to her.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, right? Those evasive answers, the changing policy positions, all that focus on Trump, the lack of a clear agenda, and those missed opportunities to be more transparent, accountable, and just more herself.
Yeah, it's a lot to think about. And it's
Mhm.
important to remember that this is just, one moment in time. Campaigns are constantly changing. Candidates, they evolve, they change their strategies, they learn from their mistakes.
So this analysis might highlight some things she could work on, but it doesn't necessarily tell us how things are going to end up or how voters are going to see her in the end, right?
Right. It's a reminder that judging a candidate is complicated. There are so many things to consider.
And that's why these deep dives are so important, right? They give us the tools to think for ourselves, to ask those tough questions and really make informed decisions as we get closer to the election.
Absolutely. They encourage us to look beyond those sound bites, beyond the headlines, and really, really dig into the issues to understand where the candidates stand.
And on that note, we're ready to dive into the final part of our look at Kamala Harris's CNN town hall.
We're going to look at how she wrapped things up. What was her final message to voters? And what does this whole performance tell us about her strategy going forward?
We're back for the last part of our deep dive on Kamala Harris's CNN town hall. We've gone through her responses, her policies, her criticisms of Trump, and even those moments where she could have been more, transparent or authentic. Now let's focus on how she ended things and see if that tells us anything about her overall message and strategy.
Yeah, it's always interesting to look at how a candidate wraps things up. It's their final chance to make an impression, right? To sum up their main points and make that last appeal to voters.
So what did you think about her closing remarks? Did she did she have a clear, compelling message, or did she kind of miss the mark?
Well, the analysis suggests that her closing remarks were, I don't know, maybe a little underwhelming. It didn't really have that soaring rhetoric or those memorable lines that you usually get in these moments.
So not a super inspiring or exciting finish.
Not really. I mean, she repeated some of those general themes, the importance of unity, facing the challenges, fighting for everyday Americans, but it didn't really feel fresh or unique to her.
Did you walk away with a sense of her vision for the future, like what she hopes to accomplish if she's elected?
I mean, not as much as she could have. The analysis suggests that she could have used that opportunity to really lay out a concrete vision, paint a picture of what America could be like if she was leading it.
It's interesting. That seems to be the theme of this whole town hall,
Mm.
right? Not a lot of specifics, kind of general statements, not really getting into the details of her plans.
Yeah, you're right. And as we said before, maybe that's strategic. But it also risks leaving voters with a sense of, I don't know, vagueness. Like they're not sure what she actually stands for or what she wants to do.
I wonder if that's working for her.
Yeah.
Are voters looking for those concrete plans, that clear vision, or are they okay with those broad strokes, those big ideas?
That's the big question, isn't it? It's really up to each voter to decide what they want in a leader and if Harris's message is doing it for them.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I keep thinking about the bigger picture. We've really dug into this one town hall, but it's just one event, you know?
Right. Campaigns are always changing, right? Candidates, they evolve, they adjust their strategies, they learn as they go.
So this analysis shows us some areas where she might need to improve.
Hmm.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that's how things are going to play out or that's how voters are going to see her in the end.
Exactly. This deep dive has given us some great insights into how she's doing right now, but it's early in the game. She's got time to fine tune her message, focus on what matters, and really connect with those voters.
And that's what makes these deep dives so important, right? They help us think critically about the whole political process, look beyond what's on the surface, ask those tough questions and make those informed decisions as we get closer to the election.
Couldn't have said it better. It's about empowering ourselves to be those thoughtful, engaged citizens, to really participate in our democracy and hold those leaders accountable.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into Kamala Harris's CNN town hall. We hope you found it, informative, maybe got you thinking a little. Until next time, keep diving deep.